Welcome to the Love Your Inner Athlete podcast, your go-to source for all things mental fitness and sports. Whether you're an athlete, coach, parent, or professional, you will learn as you join us to dive into inspiring conversations with those who have worked to develop their mental fitness. You will hear from people who've put in the work as either an athlete, coach, parent, or professional. In each episode, we bring you discussions and expert insights on developing resilience, focus, and mindset. Discover the concepts of mental fitness and learn how to use it to create consistent, durable confidence in both sports and life. I'm your host, Hans Schulstead. Let's get started. Welcome to the Inner Athlete Podcast. I'm Hans Schulstead. Today, we're pleased to have Suz Hoppe from the University of Minnesota Duluth. She's the head athletic trainer and an associate athletic director at Duluth. And how long have you been at Duluth, Suz?
I've been here. This is always a hard question of figuring out, but I started here in 2003. So I think I'm starting my 23rd season.
Wow, that's a long time.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
We celebrated my 900th collegiate game last year, kind of towards the end of the season. So that's a lot of games.
Yeah, that is a lot of games. Well, tell me how you got to UMD to start with.
Yeah. So I started in athletic training probably like everyone else. I was a 3-sport athlete, wanted to somehow stay around teams. My family was all very athletic. I have 4 older brothers. And so, but I didn't really go the route of having a big injury. That seems to be how people get into athletic training. I thought I wanted to be a surgeon and decided I would only see athletes when they were really hurt or under anesthesia. And that's not what I wanted. I wanted to be part of a team. And I found athletic training really early in high school, actually. I decided I wanted to be an athletic trainer and, kind of followed this path to get there. I went to undergrad at UW-Eau Claire. My brother played football there and got into athletic training. I really liked that head athletic trainer, Jeff Oliphant. Then I went south to an internship. I went to Valdosta State to get my master's, worked with amazing athletic trainers there. And my first job in North Carolina, working baseball at Gardner-Webb, again, worked with amazing athletic trainers. But my husband and I wanted to be closer to home. So we moved back to Duluth. We thought we'd maybe be this far north for a relatively short time, but we're 23 years in now. So I think we're here for life.
Okay. So I know from my work with a lot of your athletes that the athletes there really trust you. Can you tell me how you think you built that trust and that safety with your athletes?
Well, first of all, I think that's a really amazing thing to say. Anytime someone puts their healthcare trust in you or their mental health care, that trust in you is really a cool thing. So what I would say is probably, I get to know them as people. I want them to be successful on the ice, but at the same time, that's only a piece of who they are. So I think I'm really real with our athletes. They know my family. I have 2 daughters and a husband that are around the rink a lot. I enjoy bringing them around as much as possible around these high performing athletes who are also really good people. And I think we just kind of become part of a team together. They've been at my house for dinner. If they couldn't go home, maybe they're from far away or whatever. They played board games with my children when they were little. So it's more than just, me taking care of an injury. I think we're all kind of in this together. Our coaching staff is the same way. So we all work really well together. And I think that's how you build trust. Just be real with them, care about them, like I said, is more than just athletes. And I care about them when they leave us. I've been to tons of weddings and, baby showers and those sorts of things, which I think is really cool.
Okay, that sounds awesome. And that's consistent with what I hear from all of them. There's some you know about and some you don't. So, So tell me, in your work, how do you address mental health as well as physical health, the aspects of performance and recovery?
Yeah. So I think, it's kind of the obvious part with the physical. Like, we're their athletic trainer. We work with them every day. They have injuries or something's bothering them. We help them. We try to prevent them if we can from having injuries. But I think the physical side of it is somewhat obvious. The mental side, I think, has come a long way. one of my first years working with a hockey team, I had an athlete call me and say, I think I might harm myself. I mean, that just to start there, one of my first years in the profession was a really hard thing. And no one talked about it ahead of time. And we didn't do much talking after, just that athlete and I did, and obviously some referrals. But, it was very different when I started out. And now when they come on a recruiting trip, even like the very first thing is part of that introduction is we talk about their physical health, but we talk about the resources we have for mental health as well. And I think that's a huge benefit of having an athletic trainer around every single day is we do daily check-ins. So we know when they're high or when they're low or they're acting different. And sometimes maybe it's just something simple as I didn't do well on the test I wanted to today, or I'm not playing as many minutes as I want. And those sorts of things, I'm a really great person to kind of vent to or talk to about some of those relationship things or things outside of the rink. But when things are more serious, we have really great resources. So we have the head of psychology at Essentia at the hospital we have a really great counseling center on campus. And so they they can be referred to get those additional resources, and we talk about it right away. We talk about it in our first team meeting. We talk about it when they're on their recruiting trip. And we try to take away the stigma as much as possible. If your knee hurts, you're going to come and see me. If something else more on the emotional or mental side is happening, you're going to come and see me and we'll get you the help that you need. And so I think that's really changed since I started. It's more in the light and we try to make it normal. We try to normalize that for our student athletes.
Okay, you answered one of my other questions. And the other thing that I have as a follow-up is, where do you still see that there is work to be done on destigmatizing or bringing it into the light?
I think very often it's with the individual more so than how we approach it as a staff here at UMD. Sometimes maybe their family or their culture or whatever may limit them from seeking help, or there's the idea of you just lay down on the couch and you talk about your parents and how they screwed you up. That's not really what counseling or therapy is.
Yeah.
And so sometimes getting over what they see in a movie or what they think that really is, that's kind of the biggest challenge. And sometimes, I've had a person that I wanted to refer for over a year, and finally that person sought out some help. So you just have to stay with it too. Sometimes it's not just like I suggest it and they go, oh yes, great, I will do that. Sometimes you have to consistently chat with them and try to get them where they need to be.
Yeah, that's similar to what a lot of other coaches, players talk about. And that's what I see is sometimes you have to consistently plant that seed and not necessarily look at it as a success or a failure in that particular moment.
Right. That's
Yeah.
exactly it. Because sometimes you have to really consistently, because very often, especially someone who's already high performer, this is how maybe anxiety, they have some anxiety, but this is how they have gotten to where they are in the first place by overworking or doing all of those things. And sometimes that as they get further along in their career, that becomes the detriment and not the thing that got them there. So trying to help them realize that there are other ways of doing things besides here all the time and holding yourself at that stress level. Yeah, I think that can be really, really challenging sometimes to get them to see what they're doing, what they did in the past doesn't necessarily mean what they should do in the future.
Okay. Well, kind of switching gears in a way, how do you help athletes, or what do you think the biggest challenge or the the strategies you use to help athletes recover from any kind of injury, but particularly major ones?
Yeah, I think again, every athlete is different, especially if it's a new injury. It's really hard to tell an athlete they have a season-ending injury. That's one of the hardest things that I have to do, to be honest. Someone has to have a major surgery and keeps them out, or someone doesn't have the surgery, but they still can't play the rest of the year. That's really challenging. So there's lots of things we do. Again, a lot of daily check-ins. The first thing when someone has an injury, as soon as they can start doing something with us, we get them doing something. An athlete is used to moving their body and used to having those endorphins and all sorts of things. So as soon as they can do something, we get them doing something. The biggest thing I learned early in my career is give them things that they can do and be successful at early. So if someone is on crutches, we work just basic walking gait, where it seems really like that would be too simple, but sometimes they need some of those early successes. I wouldn't put them, I might do some balance, 2 feet, eyes closed, something simple that they could do okay, versus like jump right to something that they could do before their injury and then they're not successful and then that creates some
Yeah.
other stresses. So we give them early successes or things that we think that they should be able to do early. The other big thing I would say we do is get them around their team as much as possible. So if they can't practice and there's a way to even get a bike out on the bench so they're out there and being around them, or they work out with the team, just maybe doing different exercises. The more that they're around their team so they don't feel so separated and isolated is really huge for our student athletes' mental health, I think.
Well, the thought that's going through my head is I knew from all the work and the relationships I have in your community that you did this well, that your organization did it well. But as we're talking, I'm like, you are doing it textbook, like the best way you could do it. Like it sounds like it's very integrated and intentional, and that's not always the case. So
Yeah.
I'm really glad to hear that. It confirms that you know what you're doing.
Yeah, I think intentional is the word that came to my head. We're not just throwing
Yeah.
exercises at someone or trying to figure out, yes, of course you have scheduling things, but as much as you can be intentional with what you're doing and how you get them back, it is really important for their success.
You've kind of touched on this, but say a little bit more about how you think mental health and emotional health and sports psychology impacts athlete performance.
For sure. I think one of the biggest things I would say about that is we kind of take the approach is if you need something to help you maybe be better in your sports performance, there's probably we take mental health as a holistic approach. So many times the things you have, either skills off the ice or skills on the ice, they
Mhm.
cross over. So if you can get out and get on the ice and perform at this high level, but you have test anxiety, how do we create those skills where they can overlap? You can use the skills that you calm yourself for your game to calm yourself for your test, or vice versa. And so we really try to, it's not just about the sport. Certainly there are times when maybe there's something specific, but we kind of take mental health as a holistic approach of if you need some skill work in on ice performance, you may need that in your regular life as well. So we try to really, again, be intentional about making sure that they're using their skills that they have in whatever situation they're in.
Okay. So what would you say the typical, and you've alluded a little bit to this, but what are the typical mental health challenges you see athletes in any sport or any level face?
Yeah, I would say honestly, I'll just use our example because I work every single day with our hockey teams, men's and women's. And so,
Uh-huh.
that's what I'm most familiar with on a day-to-day basis. So I'll use them as my example. But I think it's across the board. I think the two, certainly you can have mental health issues any
Yep.
year that you're here, but typically your freshman year is really challenging. You are always the best kid on your team, the high achieving, all of that. You come to a new school and a new town, maybe even a new country, and everybody's good. So then what's your role? How do you figure out what your role is? And, maybe I'm playing less minutes or I'm not on the power play where I used to be, or I'm the backup goalie when I was always a starter. Those sorts of things are really challenging and figuring out your role usually early when you come to the game. And then when you're about to leave us. So either you're going to leave early and you're deciding on that, or you're a senior. Are you going to play ever again? Are you going to try to go overseas and play? Are you going to play in the NHL, or am I going to be a business person? So the biggest challenges I see are usually freshman year and, the time that they're going to leave us, either leave early or senior year. But there's also lots of relationship things that affect people's performance. If my boyfriend or girlfriend and I broke up, if I'm really struggling in school and I can't figure it out, my parents got a divorce, whatever, all of those things really affect them without them maybe even knowing how or why. We had a kid whose parents were going through a divorce and he was doing some shoulder stuff because he had a shoulder injury. And we spent a lot of time in our therapy pools probably more than he needed to for his shoulder and more about talking through everything else because we were kind of a safe space to chat about that. So I think there's lots of things that affect performance, probably more indirect than direct.
Okay. Now I'm going to ask you a question that I failed to put on the list, and you can pass on
Okay.
answering it. But so you guys have been through a lot of like tragic situations. I asked CK about this when he was on. Can
Yeah.
you tell me how you think as a program you navigated those? And for the listeners, I'm talking about Adam Johnson, and then you've had some other players pass away. What can you say about that, about how you guys all work through that?
Yeah, I think that's really challenging. I mean, as we talked about, I'm close with all of our athletes. And so I guess I would say it's you do the best you can in the time that you're
Yeah.
there. You try to be there for each other. Yeah. I don't know if there's a right way or a wrong way to do that. I think we all just kind of leaned on each other. Yeah. I don't know if there, like I said, I don't know if there's a right way or wrong way that we did it. We certainly didn't have a plan for it. I know that we were actually on a road trip to Cornell when we found out about Adam. So that was pretty challenging.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I remember that. And I remember CK and I having a lot of conversations about that.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. That was a tough thing.
For sure. And then we, obviously, we had current players that were really close with him as well, even because he came back and he was best friends with older players that were here. So, it was kind of challenging across the board because we were trying to grieve, but we were trying to help them as well. So that was
Yeah.
probably the toughest.
Well, I appreciate your candidness. I wish I had remembered to put that
Yeah,
on the list so you could have been a little bit more prepared. But
that's okay.
I appreciate the answer because I also think, as you know, I've worked with a lot of situations like that. And you're right, there is no right or wrong way to do it. And you're trying to balance all of the different things as a staff and then yourselves, and you feel like you gotta set your stuff aside and then but because in order to help them. And yeah, that's really challenging. And I really appreciate your candidness on that. Let's switch gears a little bit. What role do you see coaches playing in mental health and mental performance?
I think they play a big role. I think that's again one of the benefits of being here at UMD is our coaches aren't necessarily in there talking about mental health in a locker room, but they also allow us a space for us to be able to say we can be an outlet. If something's going on, talk to Suz, talk to the athletic training and sports med staff, and they can help get you the resources. So even though they aren't the ones necessarily going in and talking about mental health, they support what we're doing and they support the student athletes. And I think whether a coach is yelling at you or not yelling at you or whatever, that's a separate thing. At the end of the day, they need to know our coaches care about them just as much as we do, the off-ice staff. And I think we're really lucky here that that's what we have. Like our coaches, both the men's and women's side, they want what's best for our kids. And so at the end of the day, like I said, they may be not the one talking about it, but they certainly push the support so they know that their kids could come and chat with us and get the help they need. So,
Okay. Well, switching gears, a lot of times, a lot of the athletes I work with go on to play at a higher level. Some and all of them, their careers come to an end. And I have had many that have become athletic trainers. What advice would you give to young athletes who want to go into the career of athletic training?
yeah, I mean, I got into it 100 years ago, but the greatest profession out there. I think I feel really lucky that I've been a part of national championships and some really great teams, and at the end of the day, really good kids and staff, and so I think I would always beat the drum for athletic training. I think we're really lucky. We get to work with people who want to get better, and so you're working with a really motivated patient. Number one. And you get like I said, you get to be part of their daily lives and they're part of ours. I mean, I spend as much, if not more time with our student athletes than I do my own family. And so you become a family. And that's what's lucky is you can really help people on a daily basis. I have people that go and play overseas and they're sending me Facebook direct messages to say, hey, we're doing this. What do you think? And that's a really cool thing that people can trust you with their questions and their health and those sort of things. If anybody asks me about athletic training, I always say it's the best profession ever. But advice, I guess you have to care about anatomy and you have to care about helping people. And if you like those two things, then this is a great place for you.
What's something that you wish, what's like a myth in athletic training or injury recovery, or something that you wish, like you often say, man, I wish athletes would stop, or, stop doing X or Y?
I think there's a lot of TikTok, there are lots of gimmicks, I would say, out there, and they take a bit of science and turn it into this thing, and then everybody thinks we should do A, B, and C treatment. And so I think it's real easy to get wooed into this. There's some better way to do it. Sometimes things are just hard. You have to put in the work. You have to do the rehab. You have to do, the weight training and the off ice things to be good on the ice. So I think sometimes, marketing and all of those things get our kids to buy into things. And so I typically am the voice of reason for them of like, A, B, and C doesn't work. The other big thing, though, I also is, just because research doesn't say something is great, if it works for you, great. So we have a lot of things we offer here, for rehab or for treatments or whatever. And maybe they're not super grounded in science. There may be some information, but if a cold tub works for you for recovery, okay. There are certain times you shouldn't do it based on hormone levels and what we're training and we're trying to get hypertrophy, certain things that, there's times when it shouldn't. But in general, if you love cold tubbing on a Tuesday and that's your ritual and that works for you, great. So trying to find that balance between helping our student athletes not, like I said, be wooed by marketing, but do what works for them as well. So that's probably one of the biggest challenges I would say now with social media is that there's so many places giving them information that they can get information overload and then not know what they should actually do.
What it makes me think back to is all the old late night infomercials when there was only like 5 channels, like, and if you buy this thing, like it's going to solve all your problems.
Yes. That's that, but now it's an 8-second clips on TikTok and Instagram.
Yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah. What was it that Suzanne Summers would pitch for flat abs?
Oh yeah. The ab roller, maybe.
Ab roller, or there was it was a contraption where like it rolled over and it was, I mean, there are probably contraptions like that work, but it's, yeah, I see that a lot too. And getting stuck on the idea. Or do you feel like sometimes that misinformation that they get on social media leads them to get stuck on that kind of a solution?
For sure. For sure. And again, I think because we have such a good relationship, they ask a lot of questions.
Yeah.
Like, what do you think of this? Usually they kind of know my answer for most of those things, but they still ask. And I try to tell them why I like it or why I don't. But I leave it up to them. If it's not contraindicated, if it's not going to hurt them, then I just try to leave it up to them as much as possible. But I give them my reasoning of why I do think this works or why I think it doesn't, and then let them make their own decision.
Okay. What's a piece of advice that you have gotten in your life, either to help you in your career or your life, that has been really helpful or impactful?
Yeah, I think there's kind of two things, personal and professional. I think the professional piece is that, our head athletic trainer when I was really young said, like, you're going to see your athletes when they're at their absolute worst. Either they're having a mental health crisis or they just sustained a major injury or whatever. You're going to see your athletes at their worst. So you try to help them be at their best. And so I think I've always kind of taken that to heart of like, they maybe won't show their true self to other people because, to your coach, they decide playing time. I don't want them to see me weak or those sorts of things. And so I really take that to heart of trying to, if someone is really upset about a situation, they're not mad at me, they're mad at the situation, those sorts of things. So I that's a big piece. Professionally, we started a residency 8 or 9 years ago, and I really want to help athletic trainers be really good. That's what my dissertation was in, is transitioning from being a student to a professional in our field, and how to be really good at that. So I
Mhm.
take a lot of pride in that, of helping, so that was another thing of, I was blessed with working with really great mentors, and I want to be that for others.
Okay.
And then personally, I'm still not good at this probably, but making sure I have a lot of work-life balance,
Uh,
trying to be at my kids' things as much as possible, and do family trips with my husband and children and stuff. So, I'm not as good at that as I want to be, but that advice is like trying to make sure if you can't take care of yourself, you can't take care of others.
right.
And so trying to do that as best I can.
So, two-part question. You've worked with several championship teams and also really high level players. What do you think separates those teams and those players to be so great?
Yeah, I feel really lucky in that our men's and women's teams have done amazing things, and we've had really amazing athletes come through here. I would say for the championship teams, the thing, and I think about this a lot when you're winning and you're losing and what that looks like, your team
Mhm.
culture really matters. And the teams that have won championships, they have bought into whatever roles that they had to be in. So I'm the power play point. I need to make sure I'm the best I can at the power play, or I'm not on the power play. I'm just on the kill. I'm going to be the best killer we have, or I'm the third string goalie and I'm not playing. I'm going to work so hard in practice to make our team better. So when we won championships, everybody bought into whatever their role was, and it doesn't necessarily mean you're the goal scorer. You might, like I said, be that third string goalie. So those are the teams I think I would say is buying into your role that made a difference.
Mhm.
As far as like being an elite athlete and player, I think those kids kind of have it all together. They're figuring out, and not always. Sometimes there's highs and lows to those too, but they put in the extra work. And I don't mean like you have to be at the rink 20 hours a day. I'm not saying that, but you do what you need to work on. Be willing to do the hard things. If I'm really great at one thing, people tend to want to do that over and over because you're good at it. It gives you some joy to be good at something. The people who are elite work on the things that they're not necessarily good at, or the things that are hard for them.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, I actually yesterday I did one of these with Carson Kuhlman,
Oh, I
and
love him.
I've known Carson since he was in high school because I worked with his high school team, and that's one of the things that he talked about. And he's a kid who ended up making it to pro hockey, and he wasn't drafted, and he was undersized, and all
Yeah.
that. So yeah,
So that helps too.
yes.
Like, he's just an amazing person and athlete and hard worker. And yeah, I would sing his praises anytime.
Let's see. I think we've hit almost all the questions on here. Oh, how about a go-to recovery or wellness tip you recommend?
Honestly, the biggest thing that I think is underrated is sleep.
I
We talk a
figured you were
lot
going to
about
say that.
lifting weights, and we talk about doing recovery and doing this extra activity and taking extra shots and all those things. But in general, especially our college age athletes, do not get the rest that they need. And so I think sleep hygiene and getting in a system and what works for you to help you sleep and stay asleep. I That's when a ton of recovery actually happens. It's passive recovery, but it's good
Yeah.
for your body. So I would say sleep. That's the most underrated because it's not cool. You can't sell it. So I think that's a challenge.
Yeah.
But sleep is one of the biggest things that I think our student athletes could benefit from doing better at.
Well, and would you say that sleep is a way that great or good sleep is critical in building muscle
Yes,
and
100%.
gaining
That's when your
strength?
recovery happens.
Yeah.
And so setting yourself, obviously, nutrition is important, and doing the right technique.
Yeah.
All of those things are important, but the
Uh-huh.
recovery and building muscle actually happens when you're at rest.
Yeah, well, and I might know a few kids. I might know one in particular who would benefit to hear or who would benefit him to take that message to heart. So when it comes to sleep, when we were growing up, there was kind of like this idea that like if you could get by with less sleep, that you were tougher. Do you still see that as a prevalent attitude?
I wouldn't necessarily say like tougher, not in our kids necessarily. The problem is not necessarily that they're not sleeping because they're getting more work in. It's because they can't sleep. They were on their phone
Uh,
too long, or they can't sleep
uh,
after a game, or those sorts of things where there's more anxiety, there's more pressure, there's more, you have a handheld computer with you at all times. I don't necessarily think it's on purpose, like, oh, I only need 4 hours. I'm tougher. I
yeah,
think it's really just how society is now. There's so many things coming at you that
yeah.
keeps your brain going so you can't fall asleep or stay asleep.
Do you ever have a rule in the training room, like where they're not allowed to be on their phones or they're only allowed a certain amount of time?
Yeah, so we don't make official rules about doing that. If someone comes and talks to us about sleeping, we definitely talk to them about, like I said, sleep
Yeah,
hygiene of putting your phone away at least an hour before bed. Do you need white noise? What are some things
yeah,
that could help you stay
uh-huh,
asleep? We try not to go too heavy into melatonin because if you're taking melatonin, then your body stops producing it as much. So certainly there are times when that is an important thing, but in general, we try not to do too much supplement wise.
mhm,
But we don't have them on their phones in the athletic training room, just more for HIPAA and personal privacy issues anyway.
sure.
Play music or something in here, like through our speaker, yes, but we try not to have them be on their phones in our area. And so we try to kind of put them away when they're at the rink. But at home at night, certainly we try to give them advice to put them away.
Yeah. Well, and a lot of times I think about, I've noticed in the last several years, like there are also certain people in your life that make you put your phone away. And I don't mean like they tell you you have to put your phone away. You want to put your phone away because you want to be present. That's more important. The conversation is important. And I think that's also like one of the things that I talk about a lot is the lack of conversation and more of there's too much talking at each other and not with each other. And that's something that I've really seen as a shift. And I think one of the blessings of the pandemic was that helped us to realize that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's one thing too. We used to, bus rides are very different. You used to have to watch one movie up on the screen, that sort of thing. But
Uh,
now everybody has their personal device and their headphones in and that sort of thing. So they try to have them not have them out at team dinners, those sorts of things. Put them away
uh,
at the rink, enjoy each other in the locker room, like you said, be
yeah.
present with
Yep.
who you're with and have those conversations. So we try to do that as much as possible, just to, like I said, have them talk to each
Yeah. Okay. Well, thanks for doing this. I really appreciate it.